I believe that if people go on a gut repair program and then maintain it like that, we would eliminate a huge percentage of the chronic diseases that America and the world is suffering from. What I've been up to is really being a gypsy doctor healer. I'm traveling around the world, helping people everywhere I go. But when I do it intensely, I do it in retreats. I take people to nature. I've worked in hospitals sometime with you, and I realized that that environment is not the most propitious or auspicious for healing, right? We don't talk too much about healing in Western modern medicine, but as you know, we've been incursioning or studying into that word for a long time. So my kids are living in England. I'm traveling mostly around the East Coast, so I'd be close to them and go visit them often.
So maybe we ought to step back and catch people up on how we got to know each other. You want to start, or you?
I'll start.
You start.
I'll start.
Okay.
So I was graduating from medical school in Uruguay when an American doctor invited me to do a internship and residency and then a fellowship in cardiology. First at NYU Downtown Hospital, then at Lenox Hill Hospital. I went there and the change in lifestyle got me really sick. Through the years, as things progressed from seasonal allergies to all year round ordeal, irritable bowel syndrome and depression, 3 diagnoses that were made by very prominent specialists at Lenox Hill, and I was given 7 prescription medications. I did know by that time that was not going to correct any dysfunction from its root, that was just going to force a chemistry in my body that will maybe attenuate or eliminate some symptoms, but also with the side effects possibility, right? So I knew that already, and I realized at that time that is not what I wanted for myself, and therefore I didn't want that for my patients either. So I went into an existential and career crisis, ended up in a monastery in India because I had a very profound experience with a meditation teacher or a guru, right? Lived there for a year and a half, and I was exposed to Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, chiropractic medicine, and many other modalities from all over the world, because in this monastery in India that I went to live in, I was directing the clinic. At any given time, there were like 2,000 people in the ashram, and they would come to the clinic when they had a problem.
Yeah.
So we would be all these specialists sitting around. Because I was cardiologist, was given the directorship, right? But we used to consult with Chinese medicine doctor, Ayurvedic medicine doctor. Everybody would give their opinion. And my head was like burst open into seeing the power of all these other approaches, right? So after that, I had to come back to the United States and ended up in Desert Regional Medical Center. Right?
In Palm Springs, California.
In Palm Springs, California. And by that time, my sister, who had had a kidney transplant from my mom's kidney in my sister failed, and she went back into dialysis, right? So when I was in India the first time, I read a lot about enlightenment and these states of super consciousness, of cosmic consciousness, and the things that can happen around people that are in that state, just like when Jesus Christ used to wake up the dead or make the blind see, right? So I was very, very interested in all that kind of thing. When I was in India, I started studying, especially about one of them. I won't mention the name, but it was a very famous guru that was described by a lot of intelligent people to cause miracles. Right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to take my sister there.
Who was an avatar.
Yes, supposedly, right? So I wanted to take my sister there to see if, because I believed in and I still believe in the possibility of healing coming from super consciousness or through an enlightened being in that state, right? So first I went to check it out. I took a few days off from my cardiology practice in Palm Springs, and I went to check out this guru. And I met very interesting, intelligent people that told me that, yeah, he has powers. But there were hundreds of thousands of people that went there daily to be close to him, right? So to be really close to him, which is when the miracles happen, you had to bring something to the table. So I went to the hospital that this guru built, which is like the Taj Mahal of hospitals in India, free for everybody.
Yeah.
And I offered my services as a cardiologist. They said, yeah, sure. Write down your name. And there were 10,000 cardiologists waiting to go there to give service. So I said, somebody told me that in order for me to bring my sister and assure that she would meet this guru, I had to do something important. And through my investigations, I found out that the only thing that they didn't have was a pediatric heart surgeon. So I get back to Palm Springs. The day I get back to Palm Springs, they tell me, Alex, you have to be at the welcoming party tonight of the $6 million man, of the bionic man. I said, who is the bionic man? The bionic surgeon, you don't know, yeah. At Desert Regional Medical Center in Palm Springs, they wanted to turn it into a Mayo Clinic. And to turn it into a Mayo Clinic, they needed the top heart surgeon in the world, which was, at the time, Dr. Gundry, both adult, pediatric heart surgeon. I don't know if your audience know this, but he invented a way of stopping the heart through retrograde cardioplegia. I mean, this guy is like incredible. So everybody knew that. And so we met, we kicked it off immediately. You told me, I want to have lunch with you the next day. We ended up in my house.
Yeah.
And you grabbed books of mine. 3 days later, you said, I read your books. I need a couple more. And I said, you read them? And I quizzed you a little bit, and you had read them. 5 books in 3 days that it took me 5 months to read. And you took a book about this guru.
Yeah.
And when you returned the book, I simply dropped it on you. I said, listen, I want to take my sister there. She's on dialysis. To meet this guy, we need a pediatric heart surgeon to come with us and teach their surgeons how to do some surgeries that they didn't know how to. And you said yes. And that was an amazing trip that we had. There was some controversial stuff that happened there, right? Which actually you were a witness. We were in the room when this guru was berating me. And you basically found a way to stop it, which was incredible for me. I mean, we go back a long time.
Yeah.
So that's how we met.
Yeah, that's how we met. And, when I was recruited to come out to Desert Regional from Loma Linda, one of the things that I had been getting into was that I wanted to, because of Big Ed, I wanted to not only have a heart surgery cardiology institute, but I wanted to do what was then called alternative medicine or complementary medicine, and combine that all under one roof, which really wasn't done much. And so, I was willing and able to gobble up every book you had about the subject.
Yeah, because by the time that you came, I was already into detoxification, functional medicine, gut repair, all these things.
Yeah.
And you were like, I need to talk to you. And so that's how you ended up in my house, borrowing all my books.
That's right. So we went to India and this guru literally had built a medical school, a hospital that was all for free for everyone. And this guy, tons of books written about him, about the miracles he performed. And needless to say, your sister was not cured.
Well, no, she wasn't. But she was so touched with all the love that took for us to go there, that it made her more resilient. And eventually, she got a kidney transplant from a deceased man in a motorcycle accident. She did really well for a few years, for about 7 years. Now she's back on dialysis and on the transplant list.
Yeah, so that's how we got going. But then you, kind of like me, began to realize that the traditional practice of cardiology was not what you were cut out for. And certainly the traditional practice of heart surgery was probably not what, I was cut out for it, but there were better things to do.
Well, the thing is that when I came back from India and I was hired by this cardiology practice, they hire you for 3 years and then they make you an associate. They pay you a salary and you have to be making more money than the one they pay you to be profitable otherwise. And that translated to 7 minutes per patient. And then you have to write a prescription because, the standard practice of care. And if you don't do it and something happens, So I fell back into, because this was after my first stint in India, right? And I said, and not only that, all my irritable bowel syndrome and allergies and depression, which had improved during my year and a half in India, came back with a vengeance. So, and at that time, I discovered the practices and concepts of detoxification, gut repair through functional medicine and other modalities. And I was diving into it like crazy. But when I really understood it, I just quit the hospital and did my own thing.
And that's where your big book, Clean, came about.
Yes, that was around 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then around 2011, I wrote about how repairing the gut can repair your life.
You became a guru to lots of big-name designers and celebrities and stars, et cetera, and you started traveling the world, and we'd catch up with each other every now and then.
We met on planes, right? We would go and giving a lecture in Sun Valley.
Yeah, where are you going? Oh, I'm going there.
Yeah.
And then you we were talking, a year ago or something, and said, hey, know anybody who can do aortic valve replacements with a Ross procedure? And I had done a lot of Ross procedures, but anyhow, how'd that come about?
So, I had a difficult divorce with the mother of my 2 young children. And at that time, I was so out of my mind. I was so not present that I had a car accident. And the impact not only destroyed bones, which I had to put screws and metal plates to reconstruct all over my body, but it tore the posterior leaflet of my aortic valve. And that caused aortic insufficiency, which started dilating my heart. And we were waiting until 62 to 63, and we decided to do it. But in the month that it took from scheduling the operation till I was on the table with Dr. Ismail El-Hamamzi in Mount Sinai in New York, it had gone to 72. So I had cardiomyopathy.
Yeah.
And if that would stay like that, it would have gone to heart failure. Incredibly, after the Ross procedure, my heart function came back, and everything is fine now.
Now, okay, the skeptic would go, well, but why didn't you get divine energy and heal your aortic valve? The skeptic would say.
Yeah, I still believe that if Jesus Christ or Buddha or Mohammed or one of these enlightened beings were around, maybe they could have done that. But I wasn't going to wait for them. Because from 72, it would have been too...
Hey, I was at the Seventh-day Adventist hospital, so, they're still waiting.
I didn't want to wait for that. So I went to the best cardiac surgeon. First, I went to you, but you said, I'm not doing that anymore. So then I went to Ismail El-Hamamzi, which is the Michael Jordan of aortic valve surgery. And I had surgery. Why? Because modern Western medicine is incredible for acute problems.
Oh, yeah.
And that, even though it took some time to develop the cardiac dilation, the ventricular dilation, it was an acute problem because it was from trauma from an accident that broke the valve, the leaflet, right? Yeah. So Western modern medicine is the best for this kind of problem, right? You break a bone, you have a stroke, you have a heart attack. They open up the artery, they dissolve or suction out the clot, and they save your myocardium or your brain
or your knee or your leg.
Yes, yeah. But when it comes to the chronic diseases of the modern world, that's where modern Western medicine doesn't work so well. The chronic diseases of the modern world, even though a divine intervention could heal, we're not going to wait for that either. And we both have developed ways of creating the conditions to heal the gut, which is where we know now 90-something%, if not 100% of the chronic diseases of the modern world either originate from or are aggravated by injury of, right?
Yeah.
And here I brought my girlfriend, this anatomical model of the gut wall. So if we geek out a little bit about the intestines, we can point out and have people see what we always talk about, because an image talks more than 1,000 words, right?
Yeah, true. So, yeah, look, it is hard to imagine, but I mean, the wall of our intestines is literally only one cell thick. And it's at least the surface area of a tennis court. There's a gastroenterologist, allergist in England who is convinced and has data that it's at least 2 tennis courts. I used to think it was a football field. I may still stand by that. But it's a huge, vast, almost undefended surface area.
Right. And it's all folded so it can fit within,
Yeah.
right? But when you iron this, then so imagine a surface of 1.5 tennis court, and every millimeter or less than a millimeter, which this is blown up, but this villi would be away from that villi by very, very small. So imagine that surface with cables. The yellow thing here is the nervous system. These are nerve endings into each fingertip of microvilli, right? Now, the cable that you would have to, from 1.5 tennis court endings, right, surface, that's what the nervous system, the second brain that we talk about. And I love bringing this prop because that's how people really get the image of, how huge a brain we have in and around our gut, as well as the immune system. I don't know if you see here, there's a blowout of a little area in the wall, and there's the immune system here. Here they're making their antibodies or whatever it is that the immune system does, right? But yeah, and this is the circulatory system, arteries and veins, to which the food that is digested, supposedly, goes in and is dumped, goes in through the cell and is dumped into the vein. Right? So, and we both know, and we both wrote books about it. Yours is about to come. My book I wrote in 2011 of how this here is the Achilles heel of health for humans, right?
Yeah.
Because when this goes wrong, it touches every cell in your body.
In fact, one of the things that you and I, when we were in medical school in the dark ages, we, of course, were taught about the vagus nerve and this huge nerve that runs from the brain down to the organs, the heart, the lungs,
and the mesenteric,
all the intestines,
plexus.
And we were basically that's how the brain communicated with all these organs, and that is true. But what we didn't know is that for every one fiber coming from the brain down, there's like 9 fibers coming up. And it wasn't the brain telling this what to do. It was this telling
the brain what to do.
What's going on.
And it's not even this. It's what's happening on the other side of the wall, right? Which is telling this, which is telling your brain, right?
Correct.
And so we have all the zoo, all the microorganisms, right? And people are talking a lot about bacteria in the gut, but it's not only bacteria.
Right.
It's bacteria, fungus, virus, spirochetes, and probably bugs that we don't even know about yet, right? And these bugs, there's good ones, the commensal ones, and there's the bad ones, which are the pathogenic ones, and they have little substances in their membranes that when they break, they come, and they're supposed to be like a mucoid coating of these cells, the enterocytes, right? That are kind of like the bricks on a brick wall, and the junction between them that should be tight, and that's the cement between the cells, right? They're bricks in a brick wall. This is very much like the same, but this is alive. So the bacteria here have these substances, these molecules called LPS, lipopolysaccharides, right? And many others, like butyrate, and those signal the nervous system, but not only the nervous system, also the immune system, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And there's supposed to be, in this secreted mucinous cover, there's supposed to be an enzyme called the
intestinal
alkaline phosphatase, which breaks down these lipopolysaccharides, right? The IAP is binded to the membrane, but also secreted, right? And it alters the DNA of the bacteria. And it inhibits some bacteria from growing, and it boosts other bacteria, the good ones, to grow, right? So it already alters the microbiome in a very good way. Also digests the LPS, the lipopolysaccharides, right? Takes the one phosphate out, and turns them, because when the LPS is able to come to the wall, or maybe even go into the blood, then this thing promotes the production of LTR4, which is a pro-inflammatory, in the inflammatory cascade. These different compounds, right? Then makes more nuclear factor kappa B that then translocates into the nucleus and promotes your genes to make more of that enzyme, or to make inflammatory cytokines, right? So it's amazing how we produce things that affect the bacteria, and the bacteria produce things that affect us. And this is the symbiosis that we're talking about, right? And this is literally where I think most of our attention should be. And I think that you and I should go and talk to RFK and tell him about this, because I believe that if people go on a gut repair program and then maintain it like that, we would eliminate a huge percentage of the chronic diseases that America and the world is suffering from.
No, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought this, because I think in the energy paradox, we all know that plants have roots, and roots go into the soil, and the plant picks up nourishment from the soil through its roots. And we now know, of course, that the soil has its own teeming microbiome. And
fungus.
And fungus. I like the word holobiome. Most people think of microbiome, they think of bacteria.
That's why the mycobiome name also came into play.
Exactly. So there's a myco, the fungal biome, and there's viruses. And I just got back from a big microbiome.
Parasites and many other things.
And so we now know that the plant actually gets most of its nutrient absorption because of the bacteria and the fungi
in the soil,
facilitating the absorption and breaking down the nutrients so that the plant could absorb them. And I made the argument that these are our roots, and the soil
is portable. It's inverted inside out.
Yeah,
our roots are inverted, and the soil is portable. You put it in.
We put the soil in. And if you don't have the right, I'm going to call it holobiome, but most people think of microbiome. If you don't have the right bacteria and fungi in soil, you're not going to be able to absorb nutrients properly, or like you say, you're going to get all sorts of other troublemakers.
The signaling is going to be interrupted, and instead of, because, a little bit of lipopolysaccharides are good from commensal bacteria, because they promote the production of alkaline intestinal phosphatase, right? But then when it's too much, then the inflammatory cascade is turned on, even at the level of the nucleus, with the production of cytokines. So
wait till you read my next book. It turns out that if you eat lipopolysaccharides, it's like training the immune system, like allergy shots, that the dose makes the poison. And if you eat LPSs, you're great. Your immune system says, oh, I recognize those guys. They're not the bad guys that I thought they were. And one of the shockers.
There is a lot of LPSs in plants too.
Bingo.
Yeah. So
and in fact,
plants are training. Yeah. It's
sadly, whole grains are loaded with LPSs.
Yeah. But the problem is that eating the LPSs with a dysbiosis may be even worse. So that's why when I'm helping people create the conditions to repair their guts, sometimes these vegetarian and vegan approaches do not work.
Well, that's for sure.
With some people, I have to go full carnivore.
Yeah.
So there's so many different approaches and so many right approaches and so many wrong approaches, right, that we are becoming aware of. I mean, I've been in my book that I published, Clean Gut, in 2011. I already talked about, I told a story about my gardener at that time, Fermin, who used to come, and we had fruit trees in our garden, and we had all kinds of beautiful trees with flowers, and right? And when the leaves were brownish and the fruit didn't really grow, he wouldn't spend time there. He would go to the soil. I would follow him. I would be fascinated with his work. And he would do things around the soil. I remember one time he put this copper wire around it and he said that is going to help the microorganism. And, it's like, wow.
Sure.
But I remember he said that if you want to fix the fruit and the leaves and the flowers, you have to go to the soil and the roots, which is what we were talking about a minute ago.
Yeah.
It's incredible how these days there's so many specialties and subspecialties, right? And we're dividing in Western modern medicine, the body we divide to conquer. And there's cardiologists and nephrologists. But in functional medicine, everything is seen through systems, right? And systems are all interconnected. And different organs, every system has many organs working. And one organ can work for different systems, right? And they all meet right here. We have muscle here, we have nerves, we have arteries and veins, we have immune system cells. In fact, 70 to 80% of our immune system cells are within and around the gut, right? So all systems meet in the gut. And I say, because I have a lot of functional medicine doctor friends, and some of them specialize in hormone, but I think that everybody should start by gut repair, because I believe that everybody walking in the modern world today, it's impossible to escape the injury to the gut. So at different degrees, everybody's walking around with gut injury, right?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I've written about this. 100% of my autoimmune patients, about 80% of my practice now is autoimmune people who have been everywhere and on every treatment. And yeah, you can put a Band-Aid on it with an immunosuppressant drug. And I always say, I didn't do a heart transplant on you. What in the world are you doing on a transplant drug for your psoriasis? And they can look at me and go, what are you talking about? I said, you don't have a transplanted kidney. You don't have transplanted liver. Why are you on a transplant drug? Well, because, I need it.
My immune system is attacking me.
Yeah.
So we have to depress the immune system.
It's like,
and if people only knew that the immune system gets confused here.
Right.
Why? Because the immune system works by recognizing surfaces, which in medicine we call antigens, right? And there's the HLA system, the human lymphocytic antigen system, right? So it's as if some cells of the immune system have like a scanning machine that compares with a list of surfaces of your own body. So it measures surfaces all the time with whatever it comes across, and if there's a surface that it doesn't recognize as yourself, the immune system starts building the attack.
Yeah.
And this is where it happens.
Yeah.
And this is such a big surface that the disseminated injury, leaky gut or hyperpermeability or whatever you want to call it these days, turns into systemic inflammation. So then surfaces that are similar to ours start passing through. And I always put this example. I would like to see what you think of this example, because it's so simplistic, but I think it gives people an idea of how autoimmune disease can happen. So let's say when the gut wall is hermetic and the tight junctions are healthy, are tight,
sealed,
the only thing that can go from the lumen of the intestine into the blood is when things are finished being digested. So proteins into amino acids are absorbed through the cell and dumped into the blood. When fats are digested, they turn into fatty acids and esters, and those are absorbed. And the same thing with with sugars. When carbohydrates, big carbohydrates and sugars are broken down into simple sugars, those are absorbed. Nothing that's not digested fully is absorbed because these cells are very intelligent, right? But when this is broken, and we can talk about how it breaks afterward, undigested stuff, microorganisms start passing by, and that's when all hell. And let's say you eat chicken, and the muscle of the chicken is similar to the muscle of a human. So let's say little pieces of muscle of chicken start passing, the immune system recognizes that surface as foreign, starts attacking it. But there are parts that are very similar. As collateral damage, attack a little bit of your muscle. And then you have autoimmune myositis, right?
Right.
Where did it get confused? Right here.
Yeah, when you're at war and what I tell my patients, you scrambled the fighter jets, and the fighter jets are looking for these enemy combatants. The enemy combatants look very similar to other things in us, not quite the same. But if you're at war,
collateral damage is necessary.
You don't want to make a mistake. You'd rather shoot to kill and ask questions later. And so 100% of my patients with autoimmune disease have leaky gut, intestinal permeability. 100%.
And dysbiosis.
Yeah, and dysbiosis. 1, 2. You got to have both. Luckily, in the old days, we couldn't quantify dysbiosis, but thanks to the Human Microbiome Project, we now can get at least a snapshot of who's there at any one time. So, yeah, you're right. You have to have leaky gut, but you also have to have
some degree of dysbiosis.
Yeah, you have to have a desert wasteland instead of a tropical rainforest.
Yeah, because if you have leaky gut and you wipe out all the bacteria, suddenly
everything's fine.
Suddenly everything seems fine.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
But the moment that any organism starts
back in,
it's like if you have a roof with holes. When it's raining, your house gets wet. But if it's shiny, nothing happens. So antibiotics make it a shiny day for a little bit. And then it comes back with a vengeance. That's why, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is now in fashion, right?
It's very in fashion.
And antibiotics, as if they were not overprescribed before, are now even triple overprescribed, right? And it's we say in Spanish, pan para hoy, hambre para mañana. Bread for today, hunger for tomorrow, right? So at the moment when you take an antibiotic, it seems like everything is fine, but then wait for the comeback.
Yeah, I just got back from the Microbiota Society meeting in Malta a few weeks ago. And a wonderful professor of gastroenterology at Hong Kong University gave a 2-hour seminar on SIBO. And he said, people have got to realize that antibiotics are one of the biggest causes of leaky gut there is, number one. And number two, the antibiotics that are prescribed for SIBO, yes, are going to kill bacteria, guaranteed, but you don't even know which bacteria you're trying to kill. 2/3 of them, if you actually have SIBO, and that was a big discussion, are oral bacteria, and only 1/3 are colonic bacteria. But he said, people don't realize that antibiotics are not the problem here. You've got to stop giving these guys an environment that they thrive, either by food or antacids, or we can go on and on. You and I have talked about this.
Yeah, we can geek out a lot about this. But now to tie all this up with our history together and with our adventures around the world, what I am much looking into now is, yes, repairing the gut and repairing the conditions and restoring the health of the microbiome and creating the conditions for these cells, these epithelial, intestinal, enteric epithelial cells, be able to produce the glycoproteins that create the cement for the tight junction. All of that is great, right? But one of the things that is missing is also contact or the influence of superconsciousness. I don't know if you are familiar with a Spanish from Spain doctor called Sansegura, who writes about near-death experiences, right? And how he talks about super consciousness, which other people talk about in different terms, right? But how when ego is suppressed or eliminated and we enter into touch with that intelligence, things can happen that I'm realizing now are actually necessary for complete healing of whatever is going on, right? Because many times, and I don't know if it happens to you, but I put people on gut repair programs and I help them heal and reverse from severe autoimmune diseases and many chronic diseases, right?
Yeah.
But then they go out back in the world, difficult to sustain, and then life happens. Somebody dies, you get a divorce, you have an accident, they fire you from work, or whatever it is. And that disruption
It's just enough.
in consciousness, I think, is the number one cause of not only gut disruption, I think is the number one cause of all diseases on the planet. The stress. I mean, and we can translate that into science and talk about cortisol production and adrenaline and all the fight or flight reaction chemicals. But there's a part of it that we still don't understand.
So wait a minute. Are you saying we all need to go live in a hut in the Amazon?
I don't think we all need to live in a hut in the Amazon, even though I think we need to somehow return to nature in a way. And there's many ways to do that, right? Because we have extracted ourselves from nature and we created these artificial environments in which we live. I mean, do you know how many chemicals we're exposed to just being here?
Oh, yeah.
From the detergents with which you wash your stuff and the glue with which that hardwood was glued and the paint. I mean, so we are in, and not only that, our interpersonal relationships, they're at an all-time low in terms of consciousness. When you talk about spirituality or mysticism, right? We are in a really bad place. According to Indian traditions, we're in the Kali Yuga, where we've been through phases where the whole population was in a perfectly present state, right? And in that state, which is the state of the enlightened beings, or things happen that we still don't understand. When I go into the scriptures, in Indian scriptures, Ayurvedic scriptures, or the Talmud in Jewish religion, even in Christianism, you see that things happen. Like when I was talking about, people believe that Jesus Christ could make miracles. Well, not only Christians believe that about certain people, Jews too, and Indians too. And so at those states when super consciousness is coming through, not so distorted by ego, things can happen, which I read, for example, in textbooks and descriptions from Gurdjieff and other traditions, right? There could be even transmutation. Like, for example, hydrogen can be transmuted into any molecule, into any atom. And so, for example, the lack of certain vitamins and minerals, when you enter into those states, can even allow the transmutation of molecules inside your body. So we wouldn't even have to have them from, like, magnesium, and you wouldn't have to have them. We're all lacking magnesium these days. And
That's right.
And everybody's drinking magnesium, right? But at that level of evolution of the human being, things can happen that science would not be able to even explain for a long time. And I don't know if you watched the Joe Rogan episode with this guy, the actor Howard, about the new table of elements. And have you heard it?
No,
I
have to listen.
Oh, you have to.
Right.
And he explains much of that.
You bring up an interesting point that I talk about in the next book. You probably know, but if you don't, you need to. Pasteur, don't get me wrong, the germ theory was useful, but Pasteur had kind of an arch rival by the name of Antoine Béchamp. And they both argued about who discovered fermentation. Pasteur was a great public speaker, and he got the ear of the king of France by proving that wine went bad by bacterial contamination. And Beauchamp said, no, it has nothing to do with bacteria per se, that this is the terroir, the terrain, and the terrain of bacteria and fungi and yeast all has to be perfectly balanced. And it's only when the balance gets disturbed that disease happens and bacteria get out of control. And the reason I bring it up is Beauchamp believed that there were subcellular organisms in the blood, and we now know they're there, that could transmutate and become bacteria or could become viruses. And Pasteur won, and Beauchamp kind of died.
Yeah, and now we're pasteurizing everything.
And now we're pasteurizing everything. And and there's numerous accounts that on Pasteur's deathbed, he called Beauchamp to his bedside and said, "You're right, it is the terroir."
Yeah, so one species of bacteria, it goes even beyond that.
Yeah.
Terrence Howard, that is the...
Oh, yeah, Terrence Howard.
That is the episode of Joe Rogan. Right. You have to listen to it. We will change. I mean, and of course, there's a lot of quantum scientists and physicists that are arguing that he's not right, but I think he brings up a very interesting discussion, that correlates with a lot of things that I read in mysticism.
Yes. At this meeting in Malta, there was also the meeting of the Society of Extracellular Vesicles. Talk about, weird, but we now know that you're right. Bacteria, the biggest infection that happens inside of us is actually viral infection of bacteria, bacteriophages. And bacteria, using these little pieces of their cell wall with information, RNA and even DNA, can send out decoys for these viruses to attack to keep them safe. But if a bacteria becomes immune to a phage, the bacteria can then, even if it's enemies of this bacteria or competitors, will send this information to the surrounding bacteria. It'll merge with these bacteria, change their genome so that they're now immune to these viruses at this, subatomic level. And we sit there, and I bring this up because I was on a podcast yesterday with a neurosurgeon who happened to develop a GI issue. And he's a very enlightened neurosurgeon, but his GI issue, like you, was kind of getting out of control. So he went to a prominent gastroenterologist, and he says, I'm sure it's my gut microbiome that's got disturbed. I travel a lot. The gastroenterologist, prominent, said, there's no evidence that the microbiome is involved in anything. And he said, can you believe that? And I said, believe me.
So you change gastroenterologists.
Yeah, you can't change them.
And you have to change your gastroenterologist.
Yeah.
He talks like that.
I was on a podcast where I heard the exact same thing. And yet, one of those, the guy who kind of changed everything is Alessio Fasano, a pediatric gastroenterologist, funny guy, been on a couple panels with him. He proved that leaky gut happens. You could measure leaky gut. He proved the mechanisms.
Yeah, well, there's
gastroenterologist.
There's studies on necrosis of the endothelial, right? And NEC, it's called the premature babies have because they're lacking certain bacteria and certain proteins from amniotic fluid that make the thing mature, right? I mean, we can go down the rabbit hole, and it's fascinating, right? But what I'm bringing into the conversation here is how our state affects that also, right?
All right, let's give the audience a take-home message. Give us one hint of, okay, how do we change that state? in our lifetime? I mean, in our lives.
I'll tell you right now.
Okay.
Right? Everybody's talking about meditation, right? And there is scientific proof that meditation is incredible for so many reasons, right?
True.
But a lot of people find it difficult to do.
I have a monkey brain, as you can imagine.
I do too. And a lot of people, when they do it, they kind of close the door. They have their meditation room, which sometimes is soundproof, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it smells good because they have essential oils, and they sit and they close their, right? They close their eyes and they repeat a mantra, or they put their attention in their breath. But I believe that we need to take meditation into real life, day-to-day life. And I'll teach you a way to become present as we speak. We are now talking. You're looking at me. You're basically focusing on me. And your ears are attentive to what I'm saying so that you can process, perceive, then intellectualize, understand, and then come with questions or other examples or whatever it is in this conversation. But what if I ask you right now, as we speak, to do, no, keep on looking at me, keep on looking at me, but go wide angle. Even looking at me, you can see your team, you can see the lights, you can see the microphone, you can see the prop without having to look at it. Huh? As we look at each other,
True.
you can see your legs, you can see the walls, you can see everything. So, but what you're used to, you were just looking at me. Now, go wide angle and start noticing everything at the same time, all the time. And as we speak, not only listen to me, listen to all the noises. I mean, I was hearing some cars passing by, the air conditioning. I don't know if you hear it. It's permanent there.
Yep.
So there's noises. So keep on listening to everything and seeing everything. And as we speak, also put some of your attention on your feet and your hands. Let's say your hands right now. Put your attention on your hands. Feel them from inside. Feel the temperature, the humidity, the position. They're touching your pants. You can you can tell what material your pants are. All this information you can get from your hand, but keep on doing it. So keep on seeing everything, listening to everything, and feeling now not on your hands, but also your feet, your butt against the chair, your back against the chair. Now keep on doing it and notice how the state we're in right now is different than the one that we were 5 minutes ago. Keep on listening to the air conditioning, keep on seeing everything. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And you notice,
yeah.
But that we can do all day. Now what that does is this. The things that you can see are always in the present. The things that you can hear are always in the present. Your body and its sensations are always in the present. When you put your attention there, you're anchoring your attention in the present. In certain traditions, they say that attention is like blood flow. It's always flowing. And blood, there's only a certain amount of blood, there's only a certain amount of attention at any given point. And attention, like blood, flows to where there is less resistance. Where is there less resistance? When attention goes into the thinking mind. So how do you experience attention going to your thinking mind? As thoughts. Now, we all know by now, or we should know by now, that the thoughts that appear in your head all day long are mostly repetitive and for a lot of people negative. And they're not voluntary. You don't decide what thoughts are, at times, yes. If I ask you now, you tell me about that and you bring the but most of the time it's just happening, right? That's attention flowing to the thinking mind. And the thinking mind is like ethereal. There's no resistance. Now, when I ask you to put your attention on your hand, you have to activate a nerve that goes from here all the way through the brachial nerve, through your hands, the end receptors that tell you temperature, humidity, position, right? And come
Send it back.
So there's electricity running. Electricity, when it runs through a cable, causes heat because there is resistance, right? That heat is known now to liberate endorphins. I mean, Eckhart Tolle talks about this, right? But what that does too is give you a chance, prepares you for that contact with cosmic consciousness or super consciousness, right? And when that happens, healing happens. And I see that when we go to nature and I help people, I tell them how to do this exercise, and we go in nature and we're walking around, seeing everything, listening to everything, feeling our body, smelling everything, people start entering into a state that does not happen when I send people home in the city with a gut repair program, which works amazingly, right? I've developed a gut repair program. You probably too. Mine is been around since 2011, and I've been perfecting it. And just like I heard you talk about the super soup of cabbage soup with turmeric and garlic and onion, which all help with LPS and intestinal
alkaline phosphatase.
Right? So, and that is really, really great. This program that I created is in my book, Clean Gut, right? And you can do it as described in the book, and I walk you there through step by step, right? And it has to do with diet, timing. It has to do, most of the times you need supplements, right?
Yeah.
Because as opposed to other healing modalities and programs that maybe just eating the right things is fine, with gut repair, what I find is without glutamine, without magnesium, it just makes it really, really hard, right?
Yeah.
So I created that program. I describe it in the book. I also created a company just like you in which I curate and formulate my own products. It's cleanprogram.com. You can get the kit. It brings everything that you need, and it's amazing results. Amazing results. But when you go into nature and you learn how to enter more present states, the results that you get in that way, it's way superior than what you can get by prescribing in the city. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. So, but we don't have to go live in a hut in the Amazon.
You don't have to. We have to return to nature in a way. So how do we return to nature? First of all, we have to get rid of, as much as possible, of all the exogenous toxins that we're exposed to. In the air we breathe, the water we drink and shower with, the medications we consume, 90% of which are just molecules that are not necessary. You know, the active ingredient is only 10%. In the cosmetics we apply on our skin, but mostly in the food-like products that we consume as foods, in which real foods are only an ingredient sometimes. Right? Sometimes. Yeah. All the aisles in the supermarket, which is 90% of the real estate of a supermarket, and to be in an aisle, a product has to have things that kill bacteria and fungi so that they don't get rotten in a half-life, right? A shelf life. The longer the shelf life, the shorter your life, right? We need to change this. Okay, no going to live in the Amazon, but we need to bring the Amazon into our lives. And how do you do that? Eat real foods, take care of the materials you construct, the materials you put on your skin, the products that you wash your sheets and the mattress that you use, the toothpaste.
Toothbrush.
Toothpaste. Like for example, I don't use toothpaste anymore. I use ozonated olive oil. Incredible. It just restores the gums. It takes care of everything. So and doesn't bring in all the nasty things. You know, some toothpaste. You know why toothpaste makes the
foam.
The foam is because it has foaming, making
emollients
that are toxins and BPAs, and I mean it's insane. So not have to go to the Amazon.
Video brushing your teeth with olive oil.
You have to bring the Amazon into, how do you do that? Taking care of the toxins, putting plants, but as much as possible also go into nature. Go walk barefoot in the forest, and breathe in and see everything, listen to everything, feel your feet, feel your hands. Yeah, I think it's very important.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Dr. Gundry podcast. Make sure to check out the next one here. One of the things that most of these long-lived people share is they usually eat for a long period of time, and they usually eat together.